human and ghost. In the misty heart of Jiangnan, where the weeping willows dipped their silken fingers into the mirror-like waters of the river, lived a young scholar named Guang Di. He was a man of quiet disposition, detached from the frantic race for imperial honors and societal prestige. While other men of his age chased wealth, Guang Di chased the wind through the bamboo groves and sought the hidden melodies of the earth. His only true companion was a weathered guqin, an ancient seven-string zither carved from the finest Paulownia wood, its surface mapped with fine cracks like the wrinkles of a wise old man. Every evening, as the golden eye of the sun sank behind the purple mountains, Guang Di would walk to the edge of the village. There stood a colossal ancient banyan tree. Its sprawling roots broke through the earth like frozen waves, and its dense canopy formed a natural sanctuary, shielding him from the judging eyes of the world. Under the deep velvet shadow of this tree, Guang Di would sit cross-legged, place his guqin upon his lap, and let his fingers dance across the strings. He played not for an audience, but for the sky, the river, and the drifting clouds. His music was a tapestry of sighs, a liquid language that spoke of longing, of the fleeting nature of spring, and of the vast, beautiful sorrow of existence. When he played, the busy chatter of the village faded into a distant murmur, and the world seemed to hold its breath. What Guang Di did not know, however, was that his music echoed far beyond the realm of the living. The ancient banyan tree was a crossroads, a threshold where the veil between the mortal world and the afterlife grew thin. The deep, resonant frequencies of his guqin did not merely vibrate through the air. They rippled through the cold, gray fabric of the underworld. To the restless dead, who wandered in perpetual shadow, forgotten by time and starved of warmth, Guang Di's music was a beacon of pure light. At first, they came in ones and twos. They were pale, translucent shapes, hovering at the edge of the grove, their hollow eyes fixed on the living youth. As the days turned into weeks, the gatherings grew. Soldiers who had fallen in forgotten battles, young maidens taken by sudden sickness, and old men who died with regrets, all gathered under the banyan tree. They sat in absolute silence, bathed in the ethereal glow of the moonlight, their spectral forms swaying gently to the rhythm of Guang Di's melodies. The music gave them something they had lost long ago, the ability to feel. It warmed their frozen spirits and brought sweet, phantom tears to eyes that had not wept for centuries. Guang Di felt nothing but a strange, sudden chill in the air whenever he played, a drop in temperature that he simply dismissed as the evening breeze. Among this silent, ghostly audience was a spirit named Mei Niang. She had been dead for barely 3 years, having perished from a broken heart just days before her arranged marriage to a cruel nobleman. In life, she had been a creature of radiant beauty and sharp intelligence. In death, she was a sorrowful wraith, bound to the mortal realm by her unfulfilled longing for true love. From the moment Mei Niang first heard Guang Di's guqin, her afterlife was irrevocably changed. His music did not just soothe her. It pierced her very soul. In the weeping notes of his zither, she recognized a melancholy that matched her own. She saw a man who, though living, was as isolated and misunderstood as she was. Night after night, she drew closer to him than any other ghost dared. While the others kept their distance, fearful of the burning vitality of a living human, Mei Niang would glide forward until she was kneeling just inches away from him. She would gaze up into his sharp, focused eyes, watching the way his long fingers plucked and glided over the silk strings. Slowly, imperceptibly, the ghost fell in love with the mortal. Mei Niang knew the laws of the universe. She knew that the living and the dead were like oil and water, never meant to mix. To love a mortal was a sin against the heavenly order, a path that could only lead to destruction. Yet love is a fire that feeds on its own impossibility. She could not stay away. One evening, a violent storm broke out while Guangdi was playing. The wind howled through the banyan branches, and a sudden torrent of rain threatened to ruin his precious instrument. As Guangdi frantically tried to wrap his guqin in his silk cloak, his foot slipped on the muddy roots. He braced for a painful fall against the jagged rocks below. But the impact never came. Instead, he felt a sensation like being caught by a cloud of frozen mist. A profound, bone-chilling cold wrapped around his torso, slowing his descent until he landed gently on the soft moss. Gaspers filled the air, not from human lungs, but like the rustling of 1,000 dry leaves. Guangdi blinked through the rain and looked up. Standing before him was a woman of ethereal beauty. Her skin was as pale as winter snow, her hair a river of midnight silk that defied the wind, and her eyes held the depth of a dark, starlit ocean. She wore a flowing, traditional gown of pale blue, which seemed to ripple even though the wind had suddenly died down around her. "Are you harmed, young master?" her voice murmured. It did not sound like it came from her lips, but rather echoed directly inside his mind, like the chiming of distant silver bells. Guangdi scrambled to his feet, his heart hammering against his ribs. He looked around and noticed, for the first time, that the shadows around the tree were moving. Dozens of pale, faceless entities were watching him from the darkness. He realized with a jolt of terror that he was surrounded by spirits. What are you?" he stammered, gripping his guqin tightly against his chest. Mei Niang stepped back, her eyes downcast with a profound sadness. "Do not fear us," she whispered softly. "We are only the forgotten ones. Your music is the only thread that connects us to the warmth of life. We mean you no harm. I could not bear to see you hurt." Looking into her sorrowful eyes, Guangdi felt his terror melt away, replaced by an overwhelming wave of sympathy. He looked at the phantom woman and realized she was not a monster, but a soul trapped in eternal loneliness. "You have been listening to me?" he asked, his voice softening. Mei Niang nodded gently. "Every night. Your heart speaks through your strings, Guangdi. It is the most beautiful thing I have ever known." Hearing his name pronounced by her spectral voice sent a shiver down his spine, not of fear, but of an awakening passion. From that night on, the nature of the banyan tree changed. Guangdi no longer played for the void. He played for Mei Niang. The other ghosts, sensing the dangerous shift in energy, gradually withdrew into the deeper shadows, leaving the two lovers to their forbidden paradise. Every twilight, Guangdi would return to the tree, and Mei Niang would materialize from the mist. They would talk for hours. He told her about his dreams of a simple life, his love for poetry, and his loneliness in a world obsessed with material gain. She told him about the beauty of the stars viewed from the spirit realm, the silent history of the ancient tree, and the tragic life she had left behind. When he played his guqin, she would dance. Her spectral form moved like smoke in the moonlight, a breathless ballet of grace and sorrow. Guangdi was completely captivated. He no longer saw her as a ghost. To him, she was the only entity in the world that truly understood him. But the universe does not tolerate the blurring of its boundaries. As the months passed, a terrible toll began to be extracted from Guangdi. Every time they met, every time he breathed in her icy aura, and every time she tentatively brushed her ghostly fingers against his cheek, a portion of his life force was siphoned away. The essence of the dead is inherently parasitic to the living. Mei Niang did not mean to harm him. She loved him with every fiber of her eternal being, but her very existence was a vacuum of warmth. Guangdi's health began to deteriorate rapidly. His once bright eyes became sunken and dull, surrounded by deep, dark circles. His skin grew ash pale, and his strong fingers began to tremble when he played. He developed a deep, hacking cough that shook his fragile frame. The villagers noticed the change, whispering that the young scholar had been cursed or possessed by an evil demon. Mei Niang saw the physical decay of her lover, and her heart broke anew. She saw how his breath became shallow, how his hand grew cold even when the summer sun was high. She knew she was killing him. One night, as Guangdi rested his head against the trunk of the banyan tree, gasping for air after playing a short melody, Mei Niang knelt beside him. She did not touch him, fearing her own coldness. "Guangdi," she said, tears of pure light pooling in her eyes. "You must not come here anymore. You must leave this village, burn your guqin, and never look back." Guangdi forced a weak, defiant smile. He reached out and tried to grasp her hand, though his fingers only met with a freezing resistance. "Why would I leave? You are my life, Mei Niang. Without you, the world is just an empty shell." "Nubber," she cried, a sound of absolute agony. "Look at yourself. I am a creature of the grave, Guangdi. My touch is winter. My breath is frost. I am draining the life from your bones. If you stay with me, you will die." "Then let me die," Guangdi whispered passionately, his voice cracking. "I would rather spend a single moonlit night in your arms than live 100 years in darkness without your face." Mei Niang wept, her spectral tears vanishing into the air before they could touch the ground. She realized that his love for her had become a madness, a beautiful, fatal obsession. He would not leave her willingly. If he died because of her, his soul would be warped by the unnatural circumstances of his death, trapped in a cycle of suffering. She had to save him from himself, even if it meant destroying the only happiness she had ever known. "Tomorrow night," Mei Niang said, her voice turning suddenly calm and distant. "Play for me one last time, a song of farewell. If you promise to do this, I will let you go, and your soul will be at peace." Guangdi, believing that she was simply asking for a final token of his devotion before they found a way to be together, nodded weakly. "I will play for you, my love. A melody that will echo through eternity." The next evening, the sky was covered in heavy, black clouds that swallowed the moon and stars. The air under the banyan tree was thick with a suffocating, unnatural stillness. Guangdi arrived, his body so weak that he had to drag his feet, using his guqin case as a crutch. He collapsed onto his usual seat beneath the sprawling roots. Mei Niang appeared, but she did not look as she usually did. Her form was blindingly bright, radiating a tragic, terrible majesty. "Play, Guangdi," she commanded softly. With trembling hands, Guangdi placed his fingers on the strings. He began to play. It was the masterwork of his life, a melody of such profound sorrow and devastating beauty that the very leaves of the banyan tree began to wither and fall. Was a song that narrated their entire love story. The first meeting in the rain, the midnight dances, the forbidden whispers, and the impending shadow of doom. As the music reached its crescendo, the air around the tree began to crackle with spiritual energy. The other ghosts returned, hundreds of them, forming a massive, silent ring around the lovers. They knew what was about to happen. They understood the price of defying the heavens. Mei Niang began to dance, but this was not a dance of joy. It was a ritual of release. With every step she took, her luminous form began to fracture. Small particles of light broke away from her body, dissolving into the dark night air. She was using the power of Guangdi's music to dissolve her own spiritual anchor, choosing absolute erasure over a life that would kill the man she loved. Guangdi saw what was happening. Horror seized his heart. Mei Niang, stop. What are you doing? He screamed, trying to lift his hands from the instrument. But a strange, invisible force kept his fingers bound to the strings. The music had taken on a life of its own, fueled by his own life force and her spiritual sacrifice. He could not stop playing. He was forced to accompany the destruction of his own beloved. Do not stop, Guangdi. Mei Niang's voice echoed in his mind, filled with a love that transcended life and death. Live for me. Let my memory be the wind in your strings. Goodbye, my beautiful scholar. With a final, dazzling flash of light, Mei Niang threw her arms wide. The music reached a deafening, shattering chord, and then silence. The string of Guangdi's guqin snapped, cutting his finger. A single drop of bright red blood fell onto the ancient wood. Mei Niang was gone. Not merely departed to the underworld, but entirely dissipated into the universe, leaving behind nothing but the faint scent of plum blossoms in the cold air. The other spirits vanished into the shadows, leaving the grove empty and desolate. Guangdi sat alone under the dead banyan tree. The curse of her presence was lifted, and his physical strength would eventually return, but his soul was permanently shattered. He had survived, but at the cost of the only entity he had ever truly loved. He never played the guqin again. He spent the rest of his days wandering the mountains of Jiangnan as a silent hermit, listening to the wind, forever searching for a melody that had been lost to the void. The story of the mortal and the ghost became a cautionary tale whispered by the villagers, a somber reminder that some loves are too beautiful for this world and too dangerous for the next.
Author, tell a true life story.
Thanks for watching.